She didn't flinch. That was the part nobody in that hotel lobby could explain afterward. A woman gets told, loudly, in front of a dozen guests, by a man in a pressed navy suit with a gold name tag that read assistant manager, that her reservation doesn't appear to be in the system, and she just stands there, hands loose at her sides, no trembling, no raised voice, no reaching for her phone to prove anything to anyone. She just looked at him. Her name was Odalys Webb. She was 43 years old. She was wearing a gray sweatshirt that said nothing on it, dark jeans with a small bleach stain near the left knee, and a pair of worn New Balance sneakers that had seen better days in a different city. She carried a single bag, canvas, faded navy blue, the kind that costs $11 at a pharmacy. No luggage, no rolling suitcase, no entourage, and she had booked the presidential suite at the Hartwell Grand for 6 nights. The assistant manager's name was Preston Cole. He was 31. He had worked at the Hartwell Grand for 4 years, and in those 4 years he had learned the way people learn things in rooms like this, that certain guests belonged, and certain guests did not. It was not a lesson anyone had taught him directly. It was something he had absorbed through the marble floors and the chandelier light and the way senior staff tilted their chins at certain arrivals. He had absorbed it, the way people absorb the things they choose not to question. He looked at Odalys Webb, and he made a decision in under 4 seconds. "I can check again," he said, in a tone that meant he had already checked everything he intended to check. "But our system is quite thorough, and if the booking isn't showing—" "It's showing, Xing," she said. Her voice was even. Not cold, not warm. Just level, like a line drawn in a steady hand. "Ma'am, it's showing," she said again. "Suite 1201, 6 nights, checked in under UBOW Capital Group. You're looking at the wrong name field." He looked at his screen. He did not want to look longer than necessary, because looking longer would mean admitting she might be right. He typed something. He looked again. The reservation was there. He felt the shift in his chest. The small particular discomfort of someone who has already committed to a version of events that is no longer accurate. He could have stopped there. He could have said, "My apologies, Ms. Webb. Allow me to have someone take your bag." He could have ended it cleanly, and none of what followed would have happened. He didn't. "This is unusual," he said. The word careful and slow, the way people place words when they're building something that isn't quite a wall but wants to become one. Bookings at this tier are typically made with a corporate liaison, and our standard procedure for suite-level check-in does require, "Do you want the card?" she said. "Or do you want to keep talking?" The lobby was not quiet. There was the sound of the fountain near the east entrance. There was soft piano from somewhere past the concierge desk. There were 2 couples in resort wear, pulling luggage toward the elevator bank. There was a bellhop near the door, pretending to check his phone. None of them were not watching. Preston Cole made his second decision. He leaned slightly forward. He lowered his voice, as if privacy were something he was offering her, when what he was actually doing was narrowing the space between them to make what he was about to say feel like reasonable advice rather than what it was. "I'm going to be honest with you," he said. "Even if the reservation processes, the guests at this level of accommodation tend to have certain expectations of one another. It's a matter of the overall experience of the floor. You understand." The lobby went, in Odalys Webb's perception, very still. She had heard sentences like that before. Not in those exact words. The words changed depending on the room, depending on the speaker, depending on how sophisticated the speaker believed himself to be. But the architecture of the sentence was always the same. There was always the word understand. There was always the suggestion that she was being given information rather than being told something about herself. There was always the way the other person's eyes went slightly past her face, as if looking directly at her was a concession they were not fully prepared to make. She was 12 years old the first time she heard a sentence with that architecture. She was standing in a school supply store in East Cleveland with her mother, and the man behind the counter had said something about how certain backpacks were really built for, and her mother had taken her hand and walked out without buying anything. They had taken the bus home. Her mother had not explained. There was nothing to explain. Some things, her mother believed, you had to let sit in the body until the body knew what to do with them. Odalys had been letting things sit in her body for 31 years. She looked at Preston Cole for a long moment. She pulled her canvas bag onto the counter, unzipped the front pocket, and set a black card on the marble surface. Not a credit card, a different kind of card. Matte, no numbers on the face, just a name and a QR code, and a phone number that went to a line answered 24 hours a day by people who knew exactly who Odalys Webb was. Then she said nothing. Preston Cole picked up the card. He looked at it the way people look at things they don't recognize, which is to say he looked at it too long. The QR code was not something he understood the function of. The name on the card was W Capital Group, and below it, in smaller print, O Webb, founder and CEO. He set it down. I'll still need to verify. Then verify, she said. He reached for the hotel phone. He called the number. It rang twice. A man answered with a voice that was preternaturally calm and said the name of the organization and then said, without being asked, "You're speaking with the Hartwell Grand, Suite 1201, checking in Ms. Webb. The authorization code is 7741, Bravo. She's cleared for all services on the property. Is there anything else you need from us tonight?" Preston Cole said no. He hung up. He did not say he was sorry. He printed the key cards, slid them across the marble in their paper sleeve, and called a bellhop with a gesture that was technically professional and completely hollow. Odalys Webb picked up the key cards. She picked up her canvas bag. She followed the bellhop toward the elevator. She did not look back. The Hartwell Grand had 340 rooms and had been the finest hotel in the city for 22 years. Its owner, a man named Gerald Hartwell III, had inherited it from his father and had spent the better part of 2 decades maintaining what he called the standard. The standard involved a particular kind of marble, a particular thread count, a particular label on the minibar bottles, and a particular kind of guest. Gerald did not think of himself as a man who discriminated. He thought of himself as a man with taste. He was in Monaco when his director of operations called him. Not about the check-in, not yet. The call was about something else. A quarterly revenue concern, a union negotiation with the kitchen staff, a minor plumbing issue on the 7th floor. Normal things. The call lasted 20 minutes. 45 minutes after that call ended, Gerald received an email. It came from an address he recognized immediately, the domain of a venture capital firm he had been in conversations with for 7 months. The firm had been considering a significant investment in the Hartwell portfolio. A partnership that would have allowed Gerald to acquire 2 additional properties and finally complete the renovation on the rooftop bar he'd been planning since 2022. The email was 3 sentences. After further review, we are withdrawing from the partnership discussions at this time. We wish the Hartwell Group continued success. This decision is final. Gerald read the email twice. He called his attorney. His attorney had not heard anything. He called the partner at the firm he'd been working with most closely, a man named Duffield who had, 3 weeks ago, shaken Gerald's hand at a dinner and said, "We're very close to yes." Duffield did not answer. Duffield's assistant said he was unavailable. Gerald Hartwell III went to bed in Monaco, not understanding what had happened. He would not understand for another 14 hours. There was a woman on the 14th floor of the Hartwell Grand named Sasha Okonkwo. She was 28 years old, and she worked as a junior communications associate for a mid-sized technology newsletter that covered funding rounds, acquisitions, and the movements of venture capital in the Midwest and Southeast. She was in the city for a conference that had ended that afternoon, and she was staying at the Hartwell on her company's account because someone had made a booking error and the room was already paid for. Sasha had grown up in Columbus. She had gone to Ohio State on a partial scholarship and had spent 3 years at a small digital publication before landing her current job. She was good at her job in the specific way that people are good at things they care about independently of whether anyone is paying them to care. She read filings for fun. She tracked founder movements the way some people track sports statistics. She had, in a notes app on her phone, a running list of people she considered underreported, individuals whose professional footprints significantly exceeded their public profile. Odalys Webb had been on that list for 2 years. Sasha did not see what happened at the front desk. She was on the 14th floor when it happened. What she saw was different. She saw Odalys Webb in the elevator the next morning, early, just after 6, when the hotel was still mostly quiet and the breakfast service was just starting. They were the only two people in the elevator. Sasha recognized her instantly, the way you recognize a face you have studied, though she said nothing because she was still half asleep and also because she was not the kind of person who accosted people in elevators. But she noticed things. She noticed the sweatshirt. She noticed the canvas bag. She noticed the key card sleeve sticking out of the bag's outer pocket, which was stamped with the Hartwell's logo and the room designation PH1201. She noticed that Odalys Webb was carrying a coffee in a paper cup from the all-night place 3 blocks away, which meant she had gone out to get coffee herself rather than ordering room service, which meant Sasha's brain was always doing this, cataloging small things for reasons she couldn't fully articulate until later, that she was someone who moved through expensive spaces without performing occupancy in them. Sasha filed this away. She was on her laptop in the hotel restaurant at 7:30 when she overheard 2 staff members talking near the service corridor. She was not trying to eavesdrop. She was, in fact, trying to write a draft introduction for a piece about a Series C funding round. But the acoustics of the room were particular, and the 2 staff members were not being careful, and what she heard was, "Preston really stepped in it last night, and you know who that is, right, and O Capital." And the assistant manager just kept going. He told her she didn't fit the floor and then laughter that was not quite comfortable. Sasha set down her coffee. She opened her notes app. She typed, Odalys Webb, Hartwell Grand, check-in incident. Then she thought about it for approximately 90 seconds. And she put her laptop in her bag. And she went upstairs. Preston Cole arrived for his shift at 8:45. He had slept adequately. He had not thought about the previous night with any particular concern. Guests pushed back sometimes, complications arose, procedures were followed, matters resolved. He had done his job. He had done his job the way he always did his job, which was to say with the conviction that his judgment was an extension of the hotel's judgment. And the hotel's judgment was sound. The general manager, a woman named Cynthia Vargo, who had been at the Hartwell for 9 years and had, over those 9 years, developed a finely calibrated sense of the particular silences that preceded institutional catastrophe, was waiting for him near the staff entrance. Cynthia Vargo had received, between 6 and 8:30 that morning, 4 emails and 2 phone calls. The emails were from the hotel's PR firm, the hotel's corporate legal contact, the head of their largest preferred partner program, and Gerald Hartwell III's executive assistant. The phone calls were from Gerald Hartwell III himself, which was notable because Gerald Hartwell III had not called the property directly in almost 2 years. She looked at Preston Cole. "Come with me," she said. They went to her office. She closed the door. She did not sit down, which was how Preston knew the conversation was going to be short. "Tell me exactly what happened last night," she said. "At check-in with the guest in suite 1201, Preston told her. He told her the way people tell stories in which they are the reasonable party. Selecting the details that confirmed the reasonableness, smoothing over the edges of the moments that, if examined closely, would not look reasonable at all. He mentioned the unusual booking structure. He mentioned the verification procedure. He mentioned that he had ultimately processed the check-in correctly. He did not mention certain expectations of one another. He did not mention you understand. Cynthia Vargo let him finish. Then she turned her laptop around. The screen showed an article. It had been published 40 minutes ago on a newsletter with 340,000 subscribers, and it had already been shared across 6 platforms. The headline was, "Who was that woman? Capital founder, Odalys Webb, describes Hartwell Grand encounter." The subhead was, "He told me I didn't fit the floor." I've heard that sentence before. I know what it means. Preston Cole read the first 3 paragraphs. He felt something specific in his chest. Not guilt, exactly, not yet, but something adjacent to it, the feeling of a structure you have built inside yourself, beginning to recognize its own weight. The article quoted Odalys Webb directly. It quoted her 3 times. The quotes were short, unhurried, and precise. She had not described Preston by name. She had not described him with anger. She had described him the way you describe a phenomenon you have studied for a long time and no longer find surprising. With the particular exhaustion of someone who has been right about something too many times to feel any satisfaction in being right again. The article also mentioned, in its final paragraph, that WW Capital Group managed approximately $4.2 billion in assets across hospitality, technology, and real estate sectors, including several properties that were direct competitors to the Hartwell portfolio. Cynthia Vargo closed the laptop. "Get your things," she said. The article was picked up by 3 regional business outlets by 9:15. By 10, it had been referenced in 2 national newsletters. By 11:30, a segment producer at a cable business network had called the Hartwell's PR firm and left a message that contained the word comment 6 times in under 2 minutes. At 12:40, the Hartwell Group stock, publicly traded since 2019, had dropped 6.2%. Gerald Hartwell III, still in Monaco, was now awake and had been awake for several hours. He was on the phone with his attorney, his PR firm, his director of operations, and his executive assistant, often in overlapping calls. He was not a man who panicked easily, but he was a man who understood money, and he understood that 6.2% was not a rounding error. He also understood, in a way that was arriving with uncomfortable clarity, that the withdrawal of the venture capital partnership and the drop in the stock and the cable news segment producer and the spreading article were not separate problems. They were the same problem. He had a communications team issue a statement at 1:15. The statement said that the Hartwell Group held the highest standards of service and inclusion for all guests, that the behavior described did not reflect the values of the organization, and that immediate action had been taken regarding the staff member involved. The statement was carefully worded. It was also about 6 hours too late to be the first thing anyone read, which meant it would be read, by everyone who read it, as a response rather than a position. There is a difference. People who work in communications understand the difference. Gerald Hartwell III was learning it. By 2 p.m., a second article had been published, this one with a broader scope, tracing 3 previous complaints about the Hartwell Grand's check-in desk over the prior 18 months. The complaints had been filed with the hotel's guest services system and had not been publicly available. Sasha Okonkwo had found 2 of the 3 through a combination of a legal document database and a source she did not name. The third complainant had, upon contact, agreed to be quoted. The third complainant had been told, 14 months ago, that her booking may have been processed incorrectly and had been offered a room on a lower floor while her original reservation, a suite, was confirmed. The lower floor room had been assigned. The suite had been given to someone else. She had spent 3 days at the Hartwell in a standard room she had not booked, and she had filed a complaint, and the complaint had been logged and acknowledged, and then nothing had happened. Her name was in the article. She was a pediatric oncologist. She had come to the city for a professional conference. She had not, she said, made the complaint public before because she had been tired, and because she had not believed anything would happen, and because she had learned a long time ago to calculate the cost of being the person who says something against the cost of being the person who doesn't, and the math had not, until now, come out in favor of saying something. The article was shared 14,000 times by 4 p.m. At 4:30, Odalys Webb came downstairs. She was still in the sweatshirt. She had her canvas bag. She walked through the lobby the way she had walked through the lobby the evening before, without performance, without announcement, as if the lobby were simply a corridor between where she was and where she intended to go. Cynthia Vargo was waiting near the concierge desk. She had known Odalys was coming down because the concierge had called her when Odalys had come to ask about the checkout process. This was something Cynthia had arranged, not to intercept, not exactly, but to be present for whatever came next, because whatever came next was going to matter. "Mrs. Webb," Cynthia said. Odalys stopped. "I'm Cynthia Vargo. I'm the general manager of this property." She paused. "I wanted to speak with you personally if you're willing." The lobby was not busy at 4:30. There were a few guests near the seating area, a couple with luggage near the elevator. The soft piano was playing again. "I have 10 minutes, Odalys said. They went to Cynthia's office. Cynthia closed the door. She did not make any of the gestures of professional cordiality. She did not offer water, did not make a comment about the weather, did not perform the ritual warmth that was usually the opening note of these conversations. "What happened to you last night was wrong," Cynthia said. "Not procedurally wrong, not technically wrong. Wrong in a way that I am embarrassed to be accountable for. And I am accountable for it because it is my property, and the people on it are my responsibility." Odalys looked at her for a moment. "The staff member," Cynthia continued, "is no longer employed here. I want you to know that was not a reaction to the article. That decision was made before the article was published. I made it at 8:47 this evening." "Okay," Odalys said. "I'm not asking you to accept an apology," Cynthia said. "I understand. That would be something you'd have to decide for yourself, and that no apology undoes what was said. I'm telling you what I did and what I intend to do, which includes a formal policy review of our check-in procedures and a mandatory staff training protocol that I'm implementing before the end of this quarter." Odalys was quiet for a moment. The office had a window that looked out onto a side street. A delivery truck was parked at the curb. A man was unloading boxes in the ordinary way that people unload boxes, without any awareness of what was happening in the room above him. "He said I didn't fit the floor," Odalys said. "Yes," Cynthia said. "I read the article." "I've heard that before," Odalys said. Different words, same sentence. She looked at Cynthia, the pediatric oncologist, the woman in the second article. "She filed a complaint with this hotel 14 months ago." "She did," Cynthia said. "What happened to that complaint?" Cynthia didn't look away. "It was logged. It wasn't escalated appropriately. That was a failure of this organization's internal process, and I will be honest with you. I did not know about it until this afternoon." "That's the problem," Odalys said. "Not Preston. Preston is a symptom. The complaint that went nowhere is the problem. The doctor who calculated whether it was worth saying something and decided it wasn't, that's the problem. You can fire a person. You can't fire a system by firing a person." Cynthia was quiet. "I know," she said. "I know that." There was a silence between them that was not uncomfortable, exactly, but was full of the things that had been said and the things that were true that had not been said and might not be. "I'm going to keep my remaining nights," Odalys said finally. "Not because the hotel deserves my business, because I booked the room and I have meetings in this city, and checking out doesn't accomplish anything except making me find somewhere else to sleep." "I understand," Cynthia said. "I'm going to tell you one other thing," Odalys said. "And it's not a threat, so don't take it as one." She picked up her canvas bag. "I have been in hospitality investment for 11 years. I have looked at 14 hotel properties in this region in that time. I have acquired 3 of them. I have walked away from the other 11 for various reasons." She looked at Cynthia Vargo directly. "The reason I walk away from a property is almost never the building." Cynthia Vargo understood what she was being told. She was being told something precise and useful, and offered in the particular register of people who do not make speeches, who instead say the exact thing they intend to say and then stop. "I appreciate that," Cynthia said. Odalys Webb walked out of the office. She crossed the lobby. She took the elevator to the 12th floor. She did not look back. She never did. 3 things happened in the days that followed. The first was that Gerald Hartwell III flew back from Monaco. He did not fly back immediately. He flew back 4 days later, after the stock had partially recovered but not fully, After 2 interview requests from business publications had gone unanswered and then answered with statements. After his attorney had advised him that appearing publicly contrite was a financial strategy as much as it was an ethical one, he called a town hall with his management team. He said the words accountability and values and moving forward in the way that people say words they have been advised to say. Some people in the room believed him. Some people in the room were calculating when they would leave. The second was that Sasha Okonkwo's article, the original one, was picked up by a national outlet and republished with an expanded interview with Odalys Webb. In the interview, Odalys spoke for the first time about her background. The apartment in East Cleveland, the mother who worked double shifts, the full scholarship to Carnegie Mellon that she had applied for on a library computer because their apartment did not have reliable internet. She spoke about the first company she started, which had failed. She spoke about the second, which had not. She did not speak about the Hartwell Grand in terms of grievance. She spoke about it in terms of a pattern she had observed across her career. The way certain spaces communicated, through small gestures and careful sentences, that her presence required more justification than other people's presence required. She said she had stopped being surprised by this a long time ago. She said she had not, however, stopped noticing it. The interview ran with a photograph of Odalys at her office. The sweatshirt again, a different one, and behind her, floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out over a skyline she had built a portion of, quietly, over a decade, with very few people watching. The third thing was small and private, and did not appear in any article. On the last morning of her stay, Odalys came downstairs to find a letter under her door. It was handwritten, on hotel stationery, in careful, unhurried script. It was from Cynthia Vargo. It was not an apology. Cynthia had said everything she intended to say about that in the office, and she was not a woman who repeated herself. It was, instead, a note about the pediatric oncologist. Her name was Dr. Aurelia James. Cynthia had contacted her directly. She had acknowledged the complaint, and the failure to address it, and the specific harm of being dismissed when you had been willing to say something. She had offered Dr. James 3 complimentary nights and a written acknowledgement that her original booking had been mishandled. Dr. James had responded. She had said she would not be returning to the property. She had also said thank you. Cynthia wrote that she understood if none of this was enough. She wrote that she was telling Odalys because it had seemed, in their brief conversation, that the doctor's experience had mattered to her more than her own. She wrote that she thought Odalys Webb was a person who would want to know, and that she was writing because she believed people who want to know things deserve to be told them. Odalys stood in the doorway of Suite 1201, holding the letter, for a long moment. She folded it carefully along its original crease. She put it in the front pocket of the canvas bag, next to the business card holder and the lip balm and the small photograph of her mother that she had carried with her, in every bag since 2009. She zipped the pocket closed. Then she picked up her bag and went downstairs, through the lobby, and out into the morning light of a city that had no idea who was walking through it, and that would, in small ways, keep learning.